But even still, thank you, Radia, for joining me and consenting to be on YouTube.
Yes. I'm honored. You know.
I know. And what's funny is that we were both, on Zoom last night performing in a show, right? So we're in our show mode. And then the next night, 24 hours later, we're at home being like, let's just talk.
Yeah, it just, I feel like I needed to see more of you.
I'm so flattered. That is potentially true. I've started to recognize that on the one hand, I've been wintering and really enjoying the slow, reflective time. But I also feel like I've sort of, I don't want to abandon relationships that mean a lot to me. And maybe abandon is a strong word. But I've just not been fully sure how to calibrate connecting with other people through social media. You want to have a conversation? Let's do that. But since a lot of the conversations a lot of the people I am connected with, I connect with through the bridge of social media, and my relationship with social media is changing. I haven't fully known how to say, hey, people, I still love you and I'm okay, but this isn't a mode of communication I know how to be a person in, So you had mentioned earlier that you've gone through some experiments with social media and promoting yourself as an artist. And I was curious, what's that been like for you?
So this is where I get obviously personal. It was part of a journey of reflect. It was a moment that happened out of self-reflection of just who I am becoming as a person, as an artist. And of course, with the whole thing, everything that happened last year, the protests, Black Lives Matter protests, and also I took a 2-month break from social media because I went out of the country to see my mom, and I'm glad I went. I went in February, and there was no there was no COVID in Bangladesh where I went, and there was no COVID in 2 other countries I went, and I came back, and if I had delayed 1 more day, I would have to quarantine. So
oh no,
I got lucky. I was gone 6 weeks. I came back in March, and I came back and there was no toilet paper in America. So I was what is going on?
Well, and I imagine, that big journey too, like you said, is perfectly timed, because you would have, without that, it would have sunk into this uncertainty and sadness around not being able to do that visit.
Yeah. And I really needed to do that because my mom usually comes every year, but the year before she was not feeling well, so she didn't want to take the trip. And I hadn't been back in 9 years. My son had never seen Bangladesh, and he's 9. So wow. It's crazy. The last time I went, he was in my belly, 2 months pregnant. And now I took him back, and it's almost like a whole decade, wow. So it was a lot of, obviously going back home, all of the things, everything, all the cliches, it was so true. And it was a great trip because it's almost like all the things that mattered before no longer matters. People leave me alone. Now the aunties are not bothering me about when you're going to get married, when you're going to get a kid. I'm like, look, I got married, divorced. I have the kid to show proof. Leave me alone. But when are you going to get married again? I'm like, don't worry. After you. So they left me alone. I had prepared actually a 3-liner. And I said this to everybody, either in English or in Bangla, that asked, because a lot of people were curious. And my mom's like, are you really a flashcard? I'm like, yeah. I am, because otherwise I'm going to go off. And I don't want to go off on these aunties.
I love this.
That whole trip and coming back and taking that break from social media and then coming back and realizing, wait, I can continue this break. I don't have to hop right back on social media. So I continued to kind of just only use Messenger here and there. And because there were no opportunities to perform because quarantine hit, I was like, wait, I don't need to advertise anything. So I don't actually need to be on it. So what I realized is that once I got back on, it was because I got emotional and triggered and very wrapped up in everything going on. And I was doing some mutual aid work and delivering food to people in Chicago on the South Side. And I was seeing things that is just like killing me, like the food scarcity, the food deserts, like how people are like, just, man, nobody knows how it is on the south side versus north side, the segregate, all of that just like got to me. And I started posting a lot of emotional things. And usually I dance or create out of my anger or my despair, but I started posting. So it was like, blah, 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 and shooting away, you know, and it's fine because everybody was feeling things. But I realized little by little that like the angry Radia and the kind of petty Radia emerged on social media and comment in my posts. And a few people had said, whoa, you're fiery these days. And I'm like, have you not met me? I'm always fiery. I'm fired about, you usually hear me talk about the arts and stuff, but this has brought to, I'm able to speak about things that I always think about, which is appropriation, gentrification, and racism. And now it's like, that's all I can think about right now. I'm sorry. Right. But what it did was it kind of, because I was being so emotional and raw and I guess angry, it was like almost like I was taking on, like I wanted also wanted some pity, I also wanted some sympathy. Like, see, I told you guys this was happening. Like, my friends don't believe me. I tell them the cops always pull me over, right? And my friends don't believe me. They're like, no, some of my friends are like, oh, you're exaggerating. Maybe you were speeding. I'm like, I'm telling you, the cops pull me over at least once a week. And I've been like handcuffed. I've been taken to, and the funny thing is the cops pull me over usually when my hair is curly. And this is something I've noticed over the years living in Pilsen. They think I'm Latina. So when they realize I'm not Latina, then they let me go. And it's, yeah, so that's like a whole other thing. So these emotions started pouring into my social media, things that I don't usually talk about on social media. I used to keep my social media super arts oriented, or my poetry, as you know. But then, and I realized.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Was that a conscious choice you made to separate those things? Was it a self-protective place that had prevented you from doing it previously, or were you just trying to keep it focused on arts and self-promotion?
No, it was more self-protected, and I'm very private about even my causes. Like, I'm a part of things, but I don't post those things. I think it comes like, just in a nutshell, I believe that comes from really after like 9/11, like the fear that was in all Muslim parents, like, don't talk about anything, no causes, nothing, just show allegiance to the flag and that's it. So, I mean, obviously I didn't follow their rules, but I did kind of internalize the whole keep things quiet. If you're supporting people, like, don't talk about it, go donate to charity, don't talk about, just look like you're like, whatever. Just look like you're basic, or
right.
look like you're basic. You don't have to be basic. So I think and as I came into this is like early 20s, of course, but as I came into myself, became a mother, divorced, all of that, like, obviously I became more, it brought out what rightfully I should be expressing. And of course, dancing more and choosing to go solo in my dance career totally like made me feel like I can say whatever I want. But still, a part of that was so private, because I realized that at the end of the day, people will like it, people will comment on it. A few, like the 1% that actually care and know me, that are commenting on it, they're people I talk to anyway in real life. Like, I talk to, if I see you in real life, we've always had long conversations about random things. But if I wanted to talk to you about something serious, you were there, you would listen, and you would have something to say back to me. But most of the people in general that are commenting or liking actually have nothing to do with me. So what it becomes is just unnecessary. It's like throwing a big wedding and inviting people you don't know.
Right.
Versus having a private ceremony. So my causes and my beliefs and my opinions became a private ceremony, but I turned that into that big wedding, and it went out of control, and people started commenting. And then, then it goes into the black hole of like, now somebody's trying to fact check me, and somebody's trying to fact check my feelings. I'm like, all right, you know what? And what gets lost is, who am I as an art? Like, I stopped posting, I was doing less postings of dance and poetry and more like opinions and things like that.
Well, and
And I realized that
it sounds like you were receiving the pushback you knew you would always get, but you couldn't help but say, this is the time to have this conversation. And
Mhm.
I don't love this stereotype of like, of angry, even when there's justification for that
Mhm.
anger. But it sounds like things reached a boiling point where you're like, you know what? You've had polite artsy radia for a long time, but this is not new. This is not some
Yeah,
like I'm waking up to it. You might be
yeah,
waking up to it, but
yeah.
so it sounds like you got some of that pushback that you knew would happen if you started
And
being
the
open.
pushback came from the people closest to me. The people
Mm,
who don't really know me or aren't in my day-to-day life, not for any bad reason, just because acquaintances, right?
mhm.
As you know, as artists, we meet so many people and they end up on
Right.
our Facebook list and we don't even know why, because like, what did I even have a talk with you ever? But those people, notwithstanding, just close people slowly started to kind of stop talking to me, stop inviting me to things, um, stop really championing me in any way. And I was like, wait, am I offending sensibilities of people closest to me?
Mm.
Oh, because like you said, they got the polite artsy radia or the passionate artsy, fierce artsy radia, but not the one that now you know what goes behind my art. All my pieces are about these things. I just don't tell you what it's about. I've never answered a Q&A about my project. So if I ever did, then you'd know. But so I was like, okay, so this is actually hurting my public and my personal image. I was just basically the conclusion I found out. And I realized that if I'm throwing too much, it sounds like I'm complaining. So this is my observation. It doesn't have to be true for anybody else. But as somebody who's loves to create strong bodies of work or very culturally appropriate and culturally diverse works of art, um, I need to focus. I mean, personally, I always focus my energies and my, what is it, my causes into my work. But it's better for me to create the piece, put it out there, and then if I get asked, what is this about? Then go into my feelings on whatever created it, whether it was racism,
Mm.
whether it was a patriarchy, whatever motivated that piece, instead of going on and on about how this has happened to me and that has happened to me. It has happened. I'm not undermining what's happened to me, but in a sea of like everyone talking about what's happened to them, it gets jumbled up, and social media is that sea. It's like
Yeah.
you can become too much for people sometimes. And I realized, like, not for myself, I'm never too much for myself, but too much for certain people. Certain people have to snooze. There are people that somebody goes, oh, I had to snooze them for 30 days because I couldn't handle them. I love them, but I gotta snooze them. There are people, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard people say, like, I had to snooze so and so, or I had to unfollow so and so, or
Mhm.
actually I had to delete so and so because their politics or their mindset is like too negative or too much for me. So as an artist, what happens when you become that person that people have to snooze? What
Mm.
happens to my business side of radio? What happens to the entrepreneurial? Because I'm really trying to apply for grants. I'm really wanting to explore that world because I have goals. So how
Right.
does that tie into my goals? Okay, right now I needed to vent, yes, and I needed to do it on the platform Dear Diary, social, Facebook. But in the long run, and also the algorithms, like realizing that when I make a really angry post, it gets a lot of coverage. I mean, it boosts, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
My poetry often doesn't boost.
Yeah. I mean, I'll share, it's not at all in the same category, but
No, go ahead.
talking about algorithms, there's some stuff I don't post as much on Facebook, and I think I'm being
Mm.
punished for it. But
Yeah,
today
that
I
too.
made
Yeah.
I made a post saying, "Hey, I want to talk about some gender stuff. Do I have
Mm.
any like trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming friends who'd be
I
willing to
saw
talk
that
about it?"
post. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that post got a lot of engagement. And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder too if it's because at some level that the algorithm knows it's inflammatory, and or
Yeah.
I happen to have a lot of friends who are generous and trans and gender nonconforming who are like, yeah, I love talking about gender. And you could pull your hair out trying to like divine what it is.
Mm,
But to your point is, when contending with, I love that you called it like a sea, like just a sea of stuff for people to process, because you're already contending with the prescriptions and prejudices of
mm,
racism. You
mm,
then get lumped into this cultural conversation as like as either an avatar of anger that people don't know how to contend with,
mhm,
or a non-nuanced perspective that
mm,
just people are like, ooh, that's part of the noise, and I'm activated by that, so I don't want to
mm,
engage it. And so even though you and someone else's experiences with racism
mm,
and injustice might be different, you get
mhm,
lumped into the same category and wind up getting muted. And
mhm,
then the dialogue doesn't
mm.
happen because people aren't acknowledging that your experience with racism is not all experiences with racism.
Mhm.
They're as multifaceted as the prejudices that people are experiencing.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was, man, you hit everything like a hammer. It's yeah. So you're right. It people who will, and I get it. Everyone, and social media is overwhelming. Whether you're like a lurker who like doesn't really comment or like on anything, I have to remind myself those people are also my quiet friends, the ones that say I'm never on social media. They're just not engaging, but
Mhm.
they're watching. So sometimes I'm sure everyone who has struggled to make themselves known as an artist have had moments where they realize, man, my friends and family do nothing for me. Like my friends and family, my close, the ones I grew up with, those friends and family, they don't really rep me. I mean, they're not against what I do, but they don't, either they're not interested at all, or they're just like, okay, this is Radia's stuff.
Yeah.
um so the people that actually, my audience is actually the unknown people. That's my audience. I always, even at shows, people who know that, oh, Radia is performing, are people I've never met.
Yeah.
So some people do a good job of having friends who are also their fans.
Mhm.
I'm not one of, I have some friends who are fans, but unless they're in the art world already, in the music and dance world, them I consider music friends. They're already there. I
Right.
mean, if you're already part of SheWolf, like, of course you're gonna support me.
Right.
It's like, but the people that I've known my whole life, the people that prop me up, that have raised me, like, why are they not interested? So then I get into that whole like, am I then not good enough, or they just don't care about me, or they don't have space for me like that, Radia. So that's where advertising is so crucial, and on social media for me, someone like me, where my fan base eventually I feel is going to be people I don't know.
Yeah. No, that makes a
Because
lot of
that's,
sense.
yeah.
Well,
And on Instagram, people will DM me on Instagram, and all the DMs I get about, hey, I loved your thing, or they'll like my dance posts, clips that I post. It's never people that you know, it won't be my brother's girlfriend or my best friend of 20 years. It'll be some random person. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm real. And I realize how important it is to reply to that, like, and comment on their so then, because that people has to feel valued for valuing me.
right. Totally. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I love that you brought that up too, because I feel as though one of the biggest
I
difficulties
live
I've
by the
had,
train, so you're gonna hear this train.
all
You know,
good.
Chi-Town.
Yeah.
I
Chi-town.
always
Yeah.
wave
Exactly.
at people.
Oh, you can see it out the window.
Yeah, sometimes I hold up signs. I think one time I flashed them.
Just one time, a little
Just one time,
moderation.
it was a midnight train, okay, Ron.
Yeah.
Promotion, girls gotta
Yeah.
get up.
Promotion. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
COVID, don't judge me.
Yeah, I have struggled with social media as a
Mm,
tool for business and promotion,
mm,
because I have often looked at it as like an art medium. or like an art project. And so I take some responsibility for this, but a lot of it is cultural and social and technological and has nothing to do with me. But I think I send some mixed signals to people in terms of like, because I share really artfully crafted things that are still authentic and vulnerable. Sometimes, and I don't have a brand image. This is the reason I haven't had a website.
Would you give me an example of what kind of post, like a poem, or are you talking about in a picture, or
so
anything comes to mind?
What I'm trying to express is that sometimes I think I come across as more this word is imperfect, but I'm going to use it. Someone once told me that I'm kind of mysterious. And I was like, mysterious? How can I be mysterious? I'm so vulnerable. I'm so open. And they're like, yeah, but I'm not sure why. And I'm like, fair point, you know? So you know that I happen to post a lot of flesh on the Instagram, like as much as I could get away with. And it's not really because I'm like trying to sell nudes or sell intimacy online. And I'm not even knocking that as a craft. I just don't necessarily.
That wasn't what you're doing.
Yeah. You know, so my Instagram in particular, Facebook isn't really curated for me anymore. I try to use Facebook like a tool. Instagram, I kind of use it like an artsy collage diary. But as I begin my YouTube journey and things like that, and I just got a website this past week. I like made it.
Yay!
It's
a big achievement. Oh my God! Like I had one, and for a year I didn't do jack with it, and then I let it go, and now I realize, oh, I need one.
Well, I think it's hard unless you have a specific idea, not just of like your personal identity, but what you want your brand identity to be.
I know, you're right.
And like what you want your message to be. And my message, you know, because I'm, you know, I don't live the like punk goth lifestyle, but I definitely did as like a teenager and young person in my 20s. Was very like, no, branding isn't good for anybody. Like, I don't want to brand myself for you. And now as I'm trying to be an entrepreneur, I'm like, but what's my message? What's my values? I can't just be myself and be competitive as an entrepreneur and an artist. Oh my God. But you asked for like a specific example, and you know, I write poetry in the captions, but not everyone reads the captions, right? I do artful compositions, but that's largely for my own amusement, as like this is an artful thing, then like I'm trying to promote a specific message the vast majority of the time. So when people respond to my messages, what they're responding to is they're like, I don't see people use social media in the way that you do. And I'm like, I think that's a compliment. But it's created a tension in that I don't know what to share on social media from a business and branding standpoint, particularly since like, and coming back to the website thing, I'm so many things and I change so rapidly that trying to come up with like a through line of identity has kept me from having a website for a decade in spite of all the things I've done. You know, and that's why I just wear the badge of artist. People are like, what kind of artist? I'm like, it's an orientation. You know?
I feel you so hard because people always ask me what do you dance? And I'm like, oh, here we go again. I have to either give you the history of my dance, because like I feel like people, especially in the US, are obsessed with like labels. Like they have to understand what kind of dancer are you, what kind of lawyer are you, what kind of doctor are you. Like unless I'm actually, you need to hire like a classical dancer, why does it matter like what kind of dancer I am? I dance. I can just like I dance, but but then it's for SheWolf. Like Julie asked me like, what can I describe your dance as? I'm like, oh no, because because I'm a fusion dancer. I think people consider it confusion dancer. Like I should just call it.
I was going to say that you didn't say like fusion dancer, like you love saying it, you know?
Because the word, it's like the freestyle, right? The word fusion, when people in the dance world, they hear fusion, they think of belly dancer.
Mm-hmm.
They think of like Beats Antique, Zoe Jake fusion. And I'm like, I don't belly dance. I mean, I can, but I don't. My fusion actually often doesn't have any belly dance in it whatsoever. So if I say fusion, people are going, because in America, fusion has become like this, I don't know, whatever it's become. And so it's like freestyle itself. It's not really freestyle. You have to learn how to do freestyle. Like, then how is it freestyle?
Right.
So it's like, even my branding is flawed because the concept of what I need to call myself, a fusion dancer, is so set. And now I'm having to redefine what it means to be a fusion performer. Like, I'm fusing movement, talking, live music, nature, all of these. My ideal performance will have all of those.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you even bring fire into the mix, right?
Yeah. And my ideal performance would have elements, nature, fire dancing, a live musician, any kind of live musician, and some poetry or talking or a story format, or like talking about why I'm doing this dance. And it'll take you through everything. So I can't really define what I do, but it also, because you said that you are an artist and that's the badge you wear, isn't that enough? It's not. This is another thing I came to realize, is that I used to say dancer, now I just say performing artist. Mm-hmm. Because and then I say I do different styles, and then I have to list the styles, and then I'm like, okay.
Totally. Well, and maybe you've experienced this
needed.
too. Maybe you've experienced this as well, that like you can tell if someone is asking that because they have genuine curiosity, or asking that because it's kind of their automatic go-to, and they're not really invested in your answer, you know?
Thank you, yeah.
Like, for people who are interested in the variety of mediums I practice, you know, artist can encompass that. If they're curious about those variety, then we can have a conversation. But some people, like you said, they're just obsessed with labels, and they want to know what kind of artist are you? And depending on the humor of the person I'm talking to, or sometimes where I want to bring the conversation, I'll just be sassy about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I can imagine you totally like.
Yeah. What kind of artist am I? I'm like, you tell me, what kind of artist do you think I am? That puts them on the spot. And you know, there's a funny trickster and like comfortable way to do that. And then there's another just like punk ass way to do that. But like, in writing my bio for the SheWolf performance that we did last night, I was like, I've just listed like 20 things. And I've also been keying into like, I've practiced a wide variety of like, you know, arts and lifestyles that are all true for present me and past tense me. But in thinking about what sort of opportunities I want to create for myself and what sort of experiences I want to have, I kind of need artists to be shorthand for all that stuff. And then also be in touch with the teaching aspects of myself, and the coaching and speaking and facilitating. And not because I want to be like a laundry list of identities, but because all of that stuff is relevant to what I talk and teach about, but I'm not necessarily trying to establish a career or identity as these things that are still a big part of me. You know, like I still have a hula hoop. I still have a hoop dance practice, right? And I still like use the word hula hoop to like describe to people what I mean by hoop dance. Yeah. But the truth is that practice is for me now, and I'm not really pursuing teaching, performing, etc. I can, and I'm not opposed to. But I think that's kind of part of just like growing older and wiser, and recognizing that like other things you have time, energy, and attention, and those things do eventually run out. You know. Yes. So So if someone said, "Are you a hoop dancer?" Yes. Am I a professional hoop dancer? I mean, if you have a budget, then I can give you a performance, but am I
Yes.
pursuing a hoop dance career? Not
Yeah.
really. But again, and this is what I drive myself crazy with. It's not like false that that was a major formative part of who I am and how I am today.
Yeah.
But I just don't fully know how to say how relevant it is or isn't, since I'm not trying to pursue that as a career right now.
I went to and I didn't catch the whole talk, which I'm beating myself up over a lot. But I did, even in the half hour that I did stay there, it was at the SAI School of the Art Institute of Chicago. My friend invited me. It was actually a talk on how to present your best self in social media.
Ooh.
And it was, yeah, it was so dope. It was like through the Chicago Cultural Center. It was supposed to be at the Chicago Cultural Center, but I guess they just changed the venue because whatever. But anyway, so I was like, wow, yeah, because that's when I had just kind of decided that, okay, Instagram's gonna be my thing. That's gonna be my money maker, so to speak. And that person was a queer performing artist slash they wrote grants. I don't know, they did a bunch of things, so I was like, oh, this is even more dope, because like they can give the queer perspective as well, because algorithms hit different.
Yeah.
And and then they were talking about, like, just like on my IG, like Radia Ali or Noori, whatever, I want to use my performance name or just my real name. um Multidisciplinary artist. You can just say that, and anyone from a grant writer to anybody is going to at least understand the word artist.
Right.
And then you have to make sure, because if you're a multidisciplinary artist, which you are, um, and you encompass anything under the sun you could pick up, you don't stop yourself from learning, and you haven't defined yourself like, oh, I'm only a hooper, that's all I'm gonna do, only hoop this, hoop that, hoop everything. No, you have evolved like so much. Even since I met you, you've been taking on so many other projects. So like, how do you solve a problem like Maria? So so basically, like that. And then in your content, like she was talking about IG, for example, in your content, make sure you are very clear on what it is. If it's a dance, talk about the dance. If it's a poem, talk about the poem. If it's you dancing a poem, so don't clutter, because it's gonna look cluttered because you do a lot of things.
Mhm.
If you want to keep it all on one IG page, then make sure you're very deliberate in the things that you do post. Don't post a number of random things about you or your son in the park. And I was like, I do have a son and we do go to the park, and me being a mother is a part of my brand. And she was like, all right, we're going to talk later. So later on, I got to talk to her for 5 minutes, and I asked her about a quick question about the son part, because I do struggle with how much do I post of my life, because my brand is based around, I'm a woman of color, I'm Asian, I'm a mother, and I am a bigger woman, I'm a curvier woman.
Well,
And
and
so these
and
are
you
all,
have a lot of and you have a lot of talents. So I don't all those are true, and don't forget your
yeah.
thumb of like, and I have all these other talents.
Yeah, but
You
it's
know.
like what people see, like they see me walking down the street, they're gonna be like, oh, like I cannot escape these
Mm,
realities.
good
These
point.
shape how much time, like you said, time, effort, and what did you say, energy or
Oh, I said time, energy, and attention. Yeah.
yeah, time, energy, and attention. It does, and all those things have changed over time. How much time, energy, and attention I have because of who I am and who I'm becoming, and who I want to show myself as. So she said that take out the things that you currently aren't feeling about yourself and portray the things that you are. If you're feeling like a strong brown girl, then start posting about it. Tag brown girl. If you feel like you're happy being a thick woman, you have to say thick woman, hashtag thick woman. I mean, these sound whatever, but it's if you want the algorithms to work for you, if you want the people to come to your page, then get them. And then if they come and see a poem and they don't get it, it's fine. You've already got them there.
Totally.
you know, if
I'll,
they Yeah, go
Sorry, I
ahead.
didn't want to interrupt. Just a thought
No, no.
came to me, right? And with the awareness that this is going on YouTube. But for example, the punk ass in me has always been like, ooh, what sort of like nudity can I get away with on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram? And I take a delight in being able to push those boundaries and have something that's
Mm.
not just like salacious or sexual, but actually
Yeah.
like erotic in the sense of like, yeah, it's evoking a palpable reaction to you that is not from you, that is not inherently horniness, and more
Mm.
frequently is like an aesthetic appreciation. However,
Mm.
when people are in my DMs asking me if I have a fan site or sell my nudes,
Mm-hmm.
I can't be like, how dare you? Because I that's kind of like, it's not actually an unfair question if that's the
Yeah.
sort of content you see from me and you don't read the poems and the captions. So again, I like I said earlier, I take responsibility for that, but I feel like I'm finally at a place where I'm understanding how to put forward a message and a brand on social media and be my authentic self and create what I'm trying to create, what I want to create. Because, yeah, I'm not ashamed of being nude. However, it's not the only thing I do.
Yeah, I know. All I do all day. Just look for them angles.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. And I've been really fortunate, because of the way I look, and because I'm not using it explicitly to like
Mm.
sell subscriptions to fan sites per
Mm.
se, which again, I honor as labor and honor
Yeah.
as legitimate, but I have not gotten the hard hand of censorship in the way
Mm.
that thicker women, women of color, trans people, like broadly, trans sex workers
Mm.
specifically, have. And that makes me uncomfortable. And it's like, again, one of those things where it's like, it's not me as an individual, it's a systemic issue, but it's still like, yeah. And I'm looking at recording and going, like, I have, even my Instagram is private now, so that's something, and I may start a new one.
Yeah.
But like, I have this perverse sense of accomplishment that I've managed to like keep an uncensored nipple up on Instagram for a couple of years. But that's like not an accomplishment. It's like an AI oversight. Um, and it just starts to feel really icky really quickly.
Yeah. Like I would say with that, it's so complex, like who gets censored and who doesn't. And of course, it has to do with what time you post and algorithms and what you're hashtagging and what you're trying to rep. But I have friends who are like, for example, video vixens, right? They do music videos and their whole job is to look like, you know, a peach. So
Right.
yeah, that's their whole job. Okay, they get paid to look like that and be that persona. So I mean, I've tried this where I did shibari and I got away with the booty pic because it was shibari. Yeah. And
How did it feel to post that?
oh, it was so scary because I'd never I'm into this culture, but it's nothing I've ever done never brought to social media. Thinking of my poor dear mother all the way across the world. I mean, not she's banned from my IG because she's just, why are you awake at 2 a.m.? I'm like, madre. So she's banned, but she's okay. You can have Facebook, mom, and you stay on my IG. I'm a almost 40-year-old woman and I need you to stay on my IG. I earned it. But other than that, like it felt like I posted it and right away I was about to delete it. And then my friend was like, no, chill, calm, just do it. Just do it. And it felt so good. And the funny thing is, I didn't get in much reaction. I thought it would be like either a lot of likes or a lot of questions or a lot of like, because I've gotten DMs about like kind of solicitations, if I do like some sexy dance or something. And I'm like, oh, those got more what? So I must have not, like you say, I must have gone through, the AI didn't catch me or something. And I was like, oh, but then, 2 days later, a friend who does burlesque is complaining about how they got taken down because they had too much butt. I'm like, it's also what's trending. So like, here's the thing. If big booty, thick butts are trending, then you'll see it more.
Yeah.
One of these days, nipples are going to be trending because, people are not going to be shocked and like comatose when they see one. And then you can post nipples. It's all about, and my brother really quickly used to work for one of those internet companies. Like it was called something with an E, some very evil sounding company, which ended up getting taken down or whatever. But anyway, basically these companies, what they do is they have these human pair of eyes, basically monitoring the internet. So anything before it reaches your search engine, it goes through these companies. So my brother is sitting in front of a computer 8 hours a day looking at horrific things, from like beheadings to like, I'm sorry, people being molested and all of this, and bad things, to like even good at everything, and making sure it doesn't reach the search engines, it doesn't pass the test. And if it's like, obviously they have to report, they have to categorize, and then they go in. If they're like black market things that shouldn't be up there, then it goes into another. So he gave me an insight into like things that don't even reach, because it just doesn't make the cut. Right. And it was interesting. He's like, it's not necessarily like all things under this is going to get censored. Some people are going to slip through the cracks. Mm-hmm. Or some people are purposely going to, because they have such a following, they've amassed such a following that now they're rewarded. Because I post a lot, I dance to songs, mm-hmm. and Facebook or Instagram will be like, this is a proprietary thing and you can't blah, blah, blah. And they'll take my video down or mute the volume on my dance clip post. And I'm like, but it was a challenge. Like I practiced with this dancer who has like millions of followers, a famous Vegas, Hollywood dancer. And she teaches these tutorials, and she posted a challenge, like dance to this song by Erykah Badu. And I danced to it and they took mine down, but her and like a lot of other people have it. So if it's a challenge, how are, like hundreds and thousands of people are doing this challenge.
Right.
And these songs are proprietary too, like the Bust It challenge now.
Right.
That's a proprietary song. Like
right.
I would get taken down for posting it unless I do it as the challenge.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's
so Go ahead.
about what's trending, and you have to be on the up and up on that. Even as somebody who's not a poppy artist, who's a more selective and avant-garde artist, you still have to know what's trending maybe in that area.
Yeah, I guess I should write a sea shanty now, right? That's what all the kids are into. Sea shanties.
That's sea shanty.
Right, that's what I'll get right on that.
Or all of a sudden just be skating, listening to some Stevie Nicks and drinking cranberry juice. Like,
right. Yeah. What? Well, this is really interesting to me in the sense that like I first experienced this in the hooping subculture, right? And mm-hmm. This was before a lot of the advanced like, copyright claim stuff really started, like, frankly screwing up people's stuff, mm-hmm. To put it mildly, because this is going on, this is potentially being seen by another algorithm. So you see people migrating from platform to platform, seeking mm-hmm. certain kinds of permissions and certain kinds of community and certain kinds of capacity to express. And I think attributing more human intent to algorithms and companies, and like particularly malicious intent, than is actually there. And I don't mean to say that censorship isn't a problem, because censorship absolutely is. But if you remember that these companies have like their triple bottom line that is mostly funded by advertisers, and that advertising and marketing is really, that's who they're answering to, because that's who funds them.
Yeah.
That's just a set of decisions that are made based on like economic survival, not because you specifically hate a particular population. and that's an oversimplification of things, but I think when people are like,
But it makes sense. No, it, it's yeah, it's not personal. It's yeah,
and like your brother's company,
yeah.
there are a lot of companies of human eyeballs just trying
Mm-hmm.
to like aggregate some sort of stopgap on
Mm-hmm.
the infinite amounts and types of information flowing through the
Yeah,
internet,
and
you know.
harmful. But their job was to stop harmful information, which there's way too much of, you know.
Yeah.
And
But when you remember that like these algorithms are really computing power and
mm-hmm.
computers are being fed more images, more data, more words, more programs than we can even fathom,
Yeah,
and processing them and only getting better at that kind of processing, we can, I feel like the vast majority of users of social media platforms, we're all trying to literally catch up to computing power with the awareness that we kind of can't. You know,
mm-hmm.
like if you imagine, and I don't know what the exact statistic was, and if this was an interview I'd planned on, maybe I'd have the data right there, right? But it's something like uh, okay, this is the wrong statistic, but it's not far off. It's something this ridiculous. It's something like 300 years of content gets uploaded to just YouTube every single day. Like if you're talking about like
Like
data
sheer
and
volume.
videos, just
Mm.
sheer volume. Yeah, you know, and watch the first YouTube comment on this be like, actually, it's 450 years of content, you know, but whatever.
Yes,
So,
we disclaimered that. We said
yeah,
we don't really know. We are giving our best educated guess. So
right.
thank you.
You know, and on the other hand, that commenter is actually detracting opinion at all, boosting me in the
Yeah,
algorithm gods
yeah, because
to
the
like
negative
higher
comments boost
visibility.
you. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
people welcome the negative comments or the
And
contrary comments. Yeah.
yeah. And that's just it. I think I could overthink this, or I could swim in this vast ocean of nonsense. And so one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, because
Yeah.
although we post different things, you know, and function around social media in similar yet distinct
Hmm.
ways, I'm curious about how you have a healthy and positive relationship with social media and promoting and sharing your art. Like,
Hmm.
what anchors you in sharing in that way? Because when I read it, I get a sense that you just genuinely enjoy sharing from that place. Is that true?
Yeah, I only share what I feel, and I've actually come to terms with the fact that there are such things as algorithms and catchy topics are going to get more attention than non-catchy. But for me, it's about being consistent in putting out work. That was a
Yeah.
personal thing I had pre-COVID, even that I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to get more gigs. I'm going to go take more opportunities. I'm going to, put myself out there, like they said. But now that version is online. Where else am I going to put myself on?
Right.
So my thing was to share as much as I can and as authentic as I can. Like, I mean, as not as authentic as I can, but share as much as I can, and um, make it so that people are aware that I'm always posting. Like if you
Yeah.
go to my page every day, every other day, I'm posting something. And the something is something I'm working on. Like I said last year, my revelation as to like, Radia, if you're just complaining about the world, this is not good for you as an artist. What you should do is make a dance about it, or if you wrote a poem about it, or if you want to write an op-ed, something like that, look into that, or even start like go on Instagram and start talking, and then instead of just like throwing all these like word vomit on there,
Mm-hmm.
and so for me, sorry, I digressed from your question, but like
That's okay.
posting consistently, um and making sure that I am like really seeing what sort of things, what sort of poems or what sort of dances get more likes. Like, do the ones I do outdoors get more likes? Do I get more likes when I'm doing certain kind of dances, like if I'm doing Indian classical, or if I'm doing hip hop or if I'm doing whatever, the most I get likes on, my most liked and viewed video ever on any social media platform was the one I did with my son.
Okay.
I did
Dancing with him.
yeah, I post, yeah, because he's a b-boy, he's a break dancer, he's a musical
Yeah.
child. My child is so musical, I love it. So sometimes we dance together, and I was like, why not post it? Because I used to hesitate posting him, but man, this kid is gonna have his own YouTube channel soon. These kids are like, they're all on TV. So I'm like, wow, I would love to see my kid on TV, but guess what? You no longer need all that middle people. You can just have a YouTube channel or post your kid yourself. So we danced to this Erica Badu song, The Healer, and the lyrics mean a lot to me. And the fact that my son and I enjoy hip hop together. And we decided to dance, and he's like, he led it. I was like, you lead it. So I'm trying to follow him. And I was like being goofy a little because he's such a good dancer. And I'm just like, I can't do what the kids do, these days. So I'm trying to do the robot with him. And it got so many likes, and like a bunch of people followed me based off of that. And I was like, oh, okay, I see. So of everything I posted in the last 2 years, this got the most hits, so to speak. So in the future, I should incorporate my son more, or whatever energy that gave off. So that answered my question that I had asked years ago to that one speaker about, hey, what about my son? Like, I am a mother. How does that work for my brand? Like, is it going to throw people off? And, she had answered a certain way. And I was like, this answer, I mean, that question was finally answered this year, 2 years later.
Right.
Where I can incorporate my son into my brand. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is what the world gave me back. The social media world and the fans or whatever gave me back. Now I don't have to. I'm not going to use my son as a business tool, but I realize that
what purity you have. I'm teasing because there's a lot of people who do make their children make them famous.
Then that's the question. And so much goes into that. Like, okay, I'm not going to be creating a whole Radia and Isandro YouTube channel, but he can pop in from time to time, and I can show the world that mother and son, we do dance together. We actually dance together all the time. I'm teaching him bachata. I'm teaching him Latin dance because it really teaches how to be in a woman's space or a woman identifying person space in a respectful way. I think Latin dance really teaches you, and ballroom dancing too, teaches you how to work together with the opposite sex without being creepy.
Right.
And so anyway, so I realized that this is so dope. Like, he can be a part of it. So that answered that question I've burned, because I'm also a burlesque performer. I also do things like I want to do a burlesque act, and do I post it? And people are going to be like, oh, she's a mother, but what would her son say? I've had people ask me, like, what do you think your son would think if he saw you with your booty sticking out? And I'm like, I've trained this little kid, okay?
Right.
He understands art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
but
actually, I might be the thing standing between him thinking women are just objects to no, women are actually capable of being in their body, in their skin, and a mother.
Yeah.
And this holier virgin thing that we have to be, even as, okay, obviously I had sex, I'm a mother, but somehow I have to retain this virgin image. Like, no.
Right. Well, you're doing, I mean, I love that you brought this up, because this is a message I'm continuously hearing from people who are more successful than me, and, who don't like freeze up at the term of the notion of marketing or branding, right? There's this whole idea that like people want to connect with whole people online. People want to connect with like all the sides of you that you're willing to share, and some that you're not, because some people really need to learn boundaries, but also because like, again, I'm being super diplomatic here. People need to be taught boundaries, and also a lot of the like challenges and rules have changed in terms of like, I wasn't taught digital boundaries growing up, really, and now we have a massively online world with lots of different ideas about what's appropriate to share and what's not appropriate to share. Companies that largely get to decide it because of their aforementioned bottom line. But I think from a like people to people standpoint, people connect with what's real, and they connect with like the fact that you're really a dancer who's really a mom who's really multifaceted, and what you said about consistency lit something up in me too, because I had mentioned earlier that Facebook is punishing me for not posting more consistently. But also this part-time YouTuber Academy project that I'm hoping to get a scholarship to, that's like lesson number one, as far as like some of the free content that they've been putting out. It's run by a man named Ali Abdal, who I only recently heard about, but my understanding is his story is that he started a YouTube channel while he was like studying medicine at Cambridge University. So like a lot of his YouTube journey was about his medical journey, his journey through medical school, and also other YouTube-y type YouTube-y? Yeah. YouTube-ish.
Yeah,
YouTube-esque. YouTube-y, yeah. kind of pursuits, So, and now he has built a successful business largely just because he posted consistently and was very transparent about his process. And that's like lesson number one is he's like consistency. You have to get in the habit of just posting consistently and being detached from it building itself. Just build it, and gradually you will have accumulated enough digital assets to like really sway the algorithm in your favor and start to build your businesses and things like that. And so that's not my strength, because I kind of, again, because I have used social media as like an art medium, I'm sort of like, when the mood strikes,
you froze.
I shall make a post. Oh,
you froze.
Uh-oh. Can you hear?
Okay, now I can see you again. Yeah, you're back.
Okay,
you're back.
Cool. I don't know why I thought removing my headphone was going to do anything about it. I just was like listening closer.
It's the same thing as when I turned the volume down to park.
Yeah.
Like, how is it going to help me park?
Yeah, so I'm trying to move out of just posting on social media when the mood strikes and getting more consistent, and knowing that I'm going to have to experiment for a while before I fully know what sides of the multifaceted entity that is Colty is really going to appeal to audiences. And I just need to get over the self-consciousness I have about not posting, branding, etc., because there are a lot of, and this was something that really came alive for me yesterday. Julie reached out via Instagram and was like, we're doing a SheWolf thing. Do you want to join? And I was like, yes, actually, sure. But that is the
You're talking about back when you first, that's how Julie found you?
Oh, no, I meant that for the show.
Are you talking about way back when? Oh,
no, I'm actually talking about the show last night. When I got involved in SheWolf, it was because of Audrey. And I saw that she was doing it. And I was like, what is this thing? And I was going through a lot of like uncomfortable, just dark, shadowy times in my life, and really not comfortable with femininity or like being in female spaces. And then the next year when I showed up, I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be surrounded by like strong feminine energy all the time. Awesome. But for the show that we did last night, where she reached out and was like, do you have something you want to share? And that was only the second show I had ever that I had done in all of quarantine. And it made so much come alive for me again, because I'd been, and same with putting my website together. I had been trying to have the answers about who I am, like before I started just sharing my consistently in flux self with people, despite the fact that there are lots of people who respond to what I share and aren't hung up about what kind of artist I am, So I think consistency is key, and being willing to like be adaptable. Like I used to carry a lot of envy for people who are like, I am one thing and this is the thing that I present and I, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone that I know Like truly everyone that I know, and definitely all the artists, are so many things that like
Yeah.
essentially none of them are pursuing just one thing until it strikes gold, you know?
Yeah, like I've been surrounded by extremely alpha women my whole life. My mother is one. We share the same birthday and people think I'm her and they find out I'm not. They're like, she's an architect, a professor. She travels the world teaching in different countries. She is a singer. She's a trained and accomplished classical singer. And she sings this specific genre of Bengali music. And the reason I brought her up is because that's her genre. Like she's very much like, she is, she dived into this specific type of music. And anything else is like, I mean, she has the musicality. I mean, she's a natural musician, natural born musician, whatever you want to call it. So she knows a good tune or a good voice or a good speaker when she sees one, and she instilled that in me, to how to tell when somebody's clear and somebody's from the heart. Basically, that's what she would always say, like, good or bad is relative, right? Like, I hate rock music, you love rock music, but at the end of the day, you cannot fake passion. And so if you're thinking of who to support as an artist and who you want to emulate or idolize or learn from or whatever, always pick the person whose passion is palpable and visible. And even if they're not in your genre, my mom, she's like, obviously this is her. She's one of those people like this. She's been singing this style of music since she was 13. So, and she travels the world also singing. So I've seen her like kind of reject me as an artist because I didn't follow her,
Mm.
you know. But also I can't hate her for it because I see that she's so into it that there's no other. Some people just have to be like do or die when it comes to certain things, because
Yeah.
now she's an expert in that. People ask for her by name. She's recognized. You go to Bangladesh, turn on the TV, you'll hear her singing at some point. So it's and then she teaches too, and she's helped build music appreciation classes in places like Saudi Arabia where her students weren't allowed to sing. She's that woman. She manages to go everywhere and do her thing and make a mark. And I realized that the kind of person she is, she needed to, but it's just because she's into that 100%, thrown herself body soul into that genre, it doesn't mean she's not a multidisciplinary artist in that, because she knows how
Right.
to sing it, she knows how to play the music to it, she knows all the artists, all the gurus that came before. So her brain is like a catalog of the past, and she's probably also tapping into the future of that genre too through all her knowledge. So I've learned that in the beginning I'd be like, oh, purists and all that, because they do criticize artists like me who are fusion performers who take a bit from here, take a bit from there. But then I realized, no, I understand their frustration, but also like they're so multidisciplinary within their discipline.
Yeah.
There's multiple things to learn. Like my flamenco teacher, she's a genius flamenco teacher. She only does flamenco. She's devoted her life to flamenco, 40,
Yeah.
50 years to flamenco. And I'm just like, don't you ever do anything else? I used to think, and I'm like, no, there's no other thing for you. Because
Yeah.
this was what you were. And we need those kind of people. And then we need our kind of artists who are like curious and able to travel between all these dimensions, almost like a multi-dimensional artist, because
Yeah.
where I am when I'm listening to the gypsies singing flamenco and I jump in and I dance when I was in Europe, that dimension is different from when I'm with my Bengali group and I'm dancing to Bengali music to when I'm fire jamming with y'all. Like it's other dimensions totally. You would not believe the things I've seen. Like that's how I feel.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like I can relate to that a lot, particularly with my
Mhm,
identity as a poet. I often
mhm.
describe myself as an interdisciplinary poet because I can speak it, I can write it, I can improvise it,
Yes.
but I've never been a published poet. I don't think I didn't really set out to be a poet as much as people responded to the poetic heart of what I was creating anyway. And I don't feel like less of a poet because I haven't been published. I've kind of
No,
avoided
that has nothing
publishing.
to do whether you're a
No,
poet or not. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
you are a poet. You are a heart and soul girl. Whatever. Like you
Yeah,
are a poet.
I absolutely agree
Let
with
it
you.
be known, YouTubers.
I I thank you for saying that. And I feel as though I would like to publish, potentially self-publish a chapbook, or maybe even publish a book before
Yeah.
I die. But a lot of the poetry hustle is paying
Mhm.
to get your work published.
Is that what
And
it is? I didn't even, yeah, that's a whole hustle. I don't even,
from what I've learned, and there's a lot to the poetry world, and I'm not entirely
yeah,
like
of course.
disconnected, and I'm not entirely immersed.
Mm.
But I don't feel as though, like, again, people aren't asking what kind of poet I am. But there are poets that I know who that's their
Mm.
life, and it's a
Mm.
very rich and interdisciplinary like
Mm.
world. But
Mm.
their mark of accomplishment, or wearing the badge of being a poet, is being published, or being published a
Published.
certain amount of times in these particular journals, et cetera, et
Hmm.
cetera. And a lot of them wind up creating their own press houses so that they can be the ones to publish themselves, so that they
Yeah.
can then get published in other places. And that's kind of the creative hustle, like, no matter your discipline. um, but like, if you talk about what I'm like professionally trained to do, I
Mm.
I would name 7 other things that I have professional training in, and the poetry thing just kind of happened, you know?
Yeah, because there are things that we choose in life, whether our parents forced us to, or we decided that's what we have to do to live, to put food on the table, whatever circumstance, friends encourage us to go into things. But there are a few things that you were just born. I personally believe that you were just born with.
Yeah.
And those things will always, it will always try to burst out of you. Like, even if you try to say, it's just a thing I do on the side. No, it's not a thing you do on the side. It's what you live
Right.
and breathe. It's how you, the world, this is who you are. Like, I don't care if you don't call yourself that, you are that. When, like, if you're talking and you're articulating in a way that makes people gravitate towards you and makes people dream and hope and feel good, um how is that not your maybe you don't want to call yourself that, but the world has already given you a title. So it's
Totally.
almost like brand, if anything, if to feel a little bit better about branding. Branding sounds so businessy, right? And like but then the world has already branded us based on our talents, because we cannot stop that. It shines through.
Yeah.
um, and if I stopped dancing for 5 years after I had my son. It was the worst time. It was the weird. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
And I regret like listening to doctors and not moving, because it messed up my body. And now I'm recovering. My son is 9, and I'm only starting the journey of recovering my body from those 5 years of not dancing.
Yeah.
But that's all it all can be achieved if you have the willpower. But it's just, why did I dim this light? Like, oh, why did I? And I had to ask that question, why did I? Because I was scared that should I become, because I knew before I had my son, I wasn't a solo dancer. I always performed in groups or like, partners. And I realized that if I had given, I was afraid that had I stepped into my light, it would take me away from family. That's what I thought. I
Mm.
thought it would be a path that would be like, oh, now because in the past I toured with groups. So I
Yeah.
was like, that was my identity as a dancer, dancing in a group or dancing with like, I danced tango. I had a dance partner. So we would tour, like travel for tango. And I'm like, oh, so all I've ever done with dance is like go places in the middle of the night. Sometimes I have a gig at 1 a.m, like things like that. How am I going to do that as a mom? And then I realized that no, I don't have to do that. I can be a solo performer. So I control the narrative of when and where I dance. And I can come and go from different groups and communities and dance wherever I want to. And it doesn't have to take me away from my son, because I'm going to do it around my hours as a mother.
Yeah.
So I was able to retain and even emerge as a solo performer versus like always being in a group. I was waiting for somebody to let me in, as a solo, as that's the free range artist, right? Like it's the best way to be. You don't have to wait for anyone's to accept you. I mean, yeah, you're applying for a grant and a scholarship. Those are different, but like you don't have to wait for a body of people to like say, yes, you're worthy. You call yourself worthy because you are worthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
I
I feel
never
as
will
though,
dance for a company again, ever. No more dancing for dance companies, dance groups,
yeah,
that whole drama and the pressure of that.
yeah. Oh, what you said about like there's something you are like at your core, like in your heart, and it like shines
Mm-hmm.
through. Like even if like everybody but you sees it until you see it, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, right. Like there is a core part of you that is and always will be a dancer. And you kind of
Mm-hmm.
had to go through that long dark night of the soul to then
Mm-hmm.
understand that like you can't extinguish that light. It
Yep.
just is being carried in a different way now.
Mm-hmm. And that light deserves promotion, deserves business, deserves customers, deserves clients. And this is
Yep.
what I had to tell myself, because I was very like, oh, this is my art, I don't want to sully it with the dollars, you know. And of course I have my day hustle, my day job, so I didn't have to. I mean, that did allow me that level of financial independence, that I didn't have to make money off my dance. But over the past 2 years, once I started realizing I was doing gigs and teaching and making a whatever little I made, I was like, wait, I can make, people are going to pay me for this. Yay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's such a
absolutely.
rush. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Marketing isn't that bad. Yes, it's daunting because I'm not a natural when it comes to like knowing how to schmooze, but you have to schmooze the internet,
Right.
basically. Instead
Right.
of schmoozing like a panel of judges, you have to schmooze the internet. And
Yeah. There was something I had actually wanted to frame this earlier and the conversation flowed in a different direction. But in terms of
mm,
schmoozing the internet, have you ever heard of or read this little book called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon?
mm-mm,
um, Totally fine. He's, he's an artist and a digital content creator, but he
mm,
created these little books called Steal Like an Artist and then Show Your Work and Keep Going. And these were books that are essentially, they're intended to be quick little like motivational reads, but
mm,
talking to people who want to create opportunity for themselves utilizing, the internet
mm,
as artists, right? And he has some really, I think, sound advice for growing um, audiences in that way. And
mm,
there's one of the things that he talks about what your posts should be is
mm,
answering the question, what are you working on? Right. So not like
mm,
what was your latte or stuff like
mm,
that. I think that's a good baseline. I also might frame it in a different way. Not only what
mhm,
are you working on, but what do you care about? And
mm,
he talks about that too. It was like if you share what you care about, you find other people who care about that, and gradually you find the people who will pay you for it. And what I thought about too was when we were in our earlier discussion about social media, if you answer the question, "What are you working on?"
mm,
I'm pretty consistently working on myself, which is why my
mm,
my social media has reflected kind of this diary art journal, like here's what
mm,
I'm going through sort of way. And when you were talking about like this, uh, justice oriented side of you coming out, that is
mm,
also work, right? Now there's consequences to framing things in certain ways, but the
mhm.
reason that I don't want to speak your purpose. I'm not intending to project this
No,
on
it's
you, but
okay. You can,
it
yeah.
answers the same question, right? What are you working on? A better society. What are you working
Mm,
on? My art comes from my rage. Like, what are you working
mm,
on? I want this world to be better than I found it because I'm raising a human in it and he's got to
mhm,
get through it once I'm gone,
mhm.
And so I don't, it's not like you put that specific phrasing, before
Yeah.
yourself before you answered it, but I still think it answers it in the relevance of like you're a whole person
Mhm,
responding and sharing generously. And that's what I'd really, really like to do. And I had to get over another massive hurdle in spite
mm,
of what I think would be the rational, reasonable, totally understandable advice.